Hi dear friends, dear UPSC aspirants, welcome to GALLANT IAS. Hope all of you doing well, your preparations going well. Today, let me discuss with you what to study in history for your prelims as well as in your mains. All of you know that history is one of the core subjects for your preliminary examination as well as in your mains examination. In the prelims, usually UPSC asks questions something around 18 to 20 questions, an average they ask from history in the prelims itself. So your cutoff will be 110 or 120 maximum, out of which something around 30 to 40 marks you score from history alone. So that's why history is one of the very core subjects in your preliminary examination. Other core subjects are like geography, economy, political science, environmental science. Obviously, history and culture also one of the core subjects for your prelims. When it comes to mains GS1, something around 80 to 100 marks you score from history itself. In mains GS1, you have that modern India, freedom struggle, art and culture, post-independence, world history, etc. So anyway, history in prelims and mains, that has been a game changer. Let me tell you. Now there are many aspirants who are fearful about this history. They are confused what to study in history, how to study history, where to study, when to study, how much and how long to study history for prelims and mains. Let me tell you, the strategy for preparing history for prelims and mains has to be very clear to you. You should know the syllabus demand of history in the prelims and mains, and obviously you must have a practice of previous year's questions from history in prelims and mains. In this session, let me share with you what all you have to study for history in order to score these 30 or 40 in the prelims or 80 or 100 in your mains examination. Let's go through what all you have to study in history, be it ancient India, medieval India, modern India, art and culture or world history for your UPSC examination, civil service examination. Let's have a look into this ancient India. Yes, what do you have to study in ancient India? Yes, you start with this prehistoric India. From ancient India, they can ask you questions. Sometimes it can be 4 questions or 3 questions. Sometimes it is 12 questions. I think in 2012 or 13, they asked 12 questions from ancient India, including its art and culture part. So the first module you have to focus upon is prehistoric India. They may ask you questions related to, for example, the Paleolithic culture, the Mesolithic culture, the Neolithic culture, the Chalcolithic culture, the salient features of Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures. Or they can ask the questions like this prehistoric painting. So that is the first module. You should cover the salient features of the cultural aspects of the prehistoric India. Second module is obviously which is Indus Valley Civilization. Indus Valley Civilization, one of the very important module from ancient India. Indus Valley Civilization, you have to study its origin. You have to study its spread. You have to study its major sites and their findings. You have to study its salient features. like its town planning. You have to study its socio-economic, cultural life of these Indus people. Definitely its religion. You have to study like the art and craft of Indus people, about their international relations, the relations with the contemporary river valley civilizations, and about its different series of decline. These concepts are very, very important for you. Now, when it comes to the third module, which is obviously, we will say, this is Rigvedic culture and later Vedic culture. Rigvedic culture and later Vedic culture. Rigvedic culture or later Vedic culture, let me tell you, obviously, yes, it's geography, or maybe it's settlement, the major areas where these Aryans settled down, okay. Then about the transition in the sense that Rigvedic culture to later Vedic culture, what all changes happened? UPSC asked such kind of questions in the prelims, or maybe it's a literature part they ask in the mains also. So how the polity, how the society, how the economy, how the culture, how the religion, religious practices, and how the position of the women changed from Rigvedic culture to Rigvedic times to later Vedic times. That is a very potential question, usually UPSC asks in the preliminary examination. And most importantly, it's literature. You should know the classification of Vedic literature. How this Vedic literature throw light into the cultural aspects of Aryans, or about the social economic aspects. So the literature and its classification is very, very important. The next important thing is, obviously, you should know how this Indus Valley civilization and this Rigvedic culture, how they are, like the comparison between Indus Valley civilization and Rigvedic culture, or Indus Valley civilization and the later Vedic culture. That is very important for you. And also, you should study like how this Rigvedic culture or later Vedic culture, how they contributed to future civilizations. How they contributed to future civilizations, or how their culture tradition preserved to modern day without breakdowns. Okay, so these concepts are important for you. Next important module is, let me tell you, which is Buddhism Jainism. It's a blockbuster module of ancient India. If you study Buddhism Jainism thoroughly from UPSC point of view, definitely this is one of the questions you can expect in every preliminary examination or in the mains examination. So this is one of the sure short solution or a question for your prelims or mains. So when you study Buddhism Jainism, let me tell you, you must study obviously its leaders or its founders or its members. Then you should study the teachings, major doctrines, or different schools of philosophies of Buddhism Jainism. You should also study what are their major sects, their major councils. Obviously, Buddhism Jainism, their differences or similarities. You should study Buddhism Jainism, the chief patrons of Buddhism Jainism. You should study obviously their contributions to literature. Buddhism Jainism, its literature, and definitely Buddhism Jainism, its contributions to art and architecture. Stupa, Chaitya, Viharas, or these Gandhara, Madhura, Amaravati schools of culture. So their contributions to art and architecture, and the major kingdoms associated with the Buddhism Jainism. kingdoms associated with the Buddhism Jainism. So these elements are very, very important for you. Now there is another module from ancient India which is called obviously Mahajanpadas. The next one is obviously Mahajanpadas, that is the phase of second urbanization, 600 BC to 500 BC. So Mahajanpadas, major 16 Mahajanpadas, their capital cities, major educational hubs, major port cities, major dynasties, major rulers, Persian invasions and Greece invasions, their implications, very important. Then obviously there are modules like this, is Maurya, the Maurya Empire. Obviously next is Gupta, Maurya, then there is post-Maurya, obviously next is Gupta, and next one is post-Gupta. So these are some crucial modules you have to study from ancient India, because when you study Maurya, post-Maurya, Gupta, post-Gupta, your focus must be on its culture part. Your focus must be on its culture part. For example, there are art forms, different architecture, different literature developed during the time of the Mauryas, post-Mauryas, Gupta, post-Guptas, etc. So your primary focus must be on its art and culture part, their contributions to art and culture, obviously literature. Also you must focus on the socio-economic religious conditions of Maurya, post-Maurya, Gupta, post-Gupta times. UPSC may ask the question, the status of the women, during Mauryas, post-Mauryas, it can be interchanged. Or they can ask the questions like about the status of the caste system, or about the institution of marriage, or child marriage, etc. So the socio-economic religious part, other than this culture, obviously you have to cover when you study Mahajanpadas, Mauryas, post-Maurya, Gupta and post-Gupta. In detail we have done in our classes and modules. So this is what you have to study from ancient India. Now let's see what you have to study in this medieval India. Okay, mostly aspirants, they just skip this medieval India because of the feeling that only one or two questions, so why should you read and why should you prepare medieval India? But surprisingly, this year UPSC asked you 5 to 6 questions from medieval India. So you can never predict UPSC and UPSC questions or anything. Obviously, the safer side is you prepare ancient India, medieval India and modern India. Obviously, you have to prepare it very well. And when you prepare, you prioritize what to prepare, what not to prepare in ancient, medieval and modern. So when it comes to medieval India, okay, it would be nice if you prepare it thoroughly. Medieval India, the first module, I would say, you cover from 750 AD to 12th century AD. Early medieval India, the major developments during this early medieval India. Study the next one, which is Imperial Cholas. Imperial Cholas, about their local self-government or about their major historical battles, about their contributions to art, architecture, literature, about that Dravidian style of temple architecture, and about the various rulers and their chronology. So when you study this, take care that the chronology of different rulers and the dynasties you have to cover. Okay, this is something like a story only. Try to understand the concept. Try to understand what all the events happened during this time, or what all the rulers and what all the things they contributed or they reformed. So please take care. The chronology of the dynasties, rulers, that is also important. Then obviously you should understand what all the social developments happened during this time, or what all these cultural developments happened during this time, and what is most important is about the local self-government. local self-government, and different sources which talk about these imperial cholas, their international relations, their look east, act east policy, about their local self-government, about their cultural aspects, etc. Next module, definitely it is Bhakti Sufi movements. Bhakti Sufi movements, this is religious revolution in medieval India. The major Bhakti Sufi saints, their teachings, their doctrines, and major literary works which are done in these Bhakti Sufi traditions, and obviously what all were the teachings, what are the similarities, dissimilarities, Saguna saints, Nirguna saints, and different silsilas in Sufi tradition, and how they contributed to this so-called concept national consciousness, or women empowerment, or egalitarian society. So what all their teachings and how they are relevant to modern society. Okay, so this Bhakti Sufi saints, major philosophers, major Sufi Bhakti saints, and their thoughts or their teachings, that is very important for you. Now coming to the next one, which is Vijayanagar Empire. Vijayanagar Empire. You might have answered the question Amaranayaga system or the taxation system of Krishna Devaraya. So when you study Vijayanagar Empire, know the dynasties. Know different dynasties, different rulers, and try to understand what all were the reforms, their major reforms, and have an idea about the revenue administration. The revenue administration, also have an idea the major historical battles they fought. Historical battles they fought. Have an idea who were the foreigners visited Vijayanagar Empire and what all they accounted on this Vijayanagar society, culture, women and social institutions. Okay, the foreigners and their accounts, very important. Now coming to the next module, which is obviously, yes, Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate or Delhi Sultanate. Here also the chronology is very important. Chronology of different dynasties, ruling dynasties and rulers, that's very important. And the reforms, for example, Alauddin Khalji. Okay, Khalji revolution. So the reforms are very important. And here all you take care that the terminology, be it ancient India or medieval India, the terminology is very important. The revenue administration is very important. The judicial administration is very important. So take care of these aspects also. Okay. And the major historical battles. Next module obviously, which is Mughal Empire. This is Mughal Empire. You have an idea when you study the Mughals, the great Mughal rulers. The timeline you should go for. Yes, the reforms, the major events, the major battles, and the status of the peasants or the status of the different social classes and their contributions to art and culture. These elements are very, very important for you. Now coming across the next module, which is Marathas. Yes, the history, the cultural history of Marathas, very, very important for you from prelims point of view. The economic history, the social history, obviously the reforms introduced by Maratha ruler Shivaji the Great, all are important from mains point of view also. Then comes to, so take care of the major reforms and major events during the time of Shivaji and later Peshwas. Now comes to advent of Europeans. These are the modules, different Europeans who arrived in India. Portuguese, Dutch or British or French, the major Europeans who arrived in India, their major settlements and the major trading privileges they enjoyed, and how the British eventually established themselves in India. So have an idea, these are the things you have to study from medieval India. Now comes to modern India. Yes, when it comes to modern India, let me tell you, you will have to study the 18th century, the 19th century, and the 20th century. To some extent, the 21st century also, post-independence. Okay? So these centuries you have to cover for modern India, because UPSC asks in detail from modern India. Very critically analytical questions or analytical questions, deeper analysis, concept-based questions, they ask from this modern India. But take care, these are the modules you have to study. For example, decline of the Mughals. Decline of the Mughals, obviously formation of the princely states. Formation of the princely states. You will have to study the British conquest of India. The British conquest of India. You will have to study the colonialism and its major impacts or implications on India's education system, India's judiciary, India's law and order, India's society, India's culture, or India's railway, you see. So colonialism and its impact or implications, positives and negatives. Next is obviously, which is about this colonial rule in India, major constitutional reforms. Major constitutional reforms up to this 1935 Government of India Act. Government of India Act 1935. You should have an idea about these socio-religious reform movements of India. Major socio-religious reform movements of India and the leaders of Indian Renaissance, their ideas, ideologies, teachings, and major legislative interventions, etc. you have to study here. Next module, obviously, which is 1857 revolt. You have to study this 1857 revolt, because Bipan Chandra starts from 1857 revolt. But UPSC asks questions much before or pre this 1857 revolt. So have an idea. This is the next module. Now coming across the next one, which is the growth of Indian nationalism. The growth of Indian nationalism, different factors, elements contributed to Indian nationalism. Then this is formation of Indian National Congress. Then the three phases of Indian national movement, that is moderate phase, extremist phase, and this Gandhian phase. These different phases of Indian nationalism, Indian national movement. Obviously, who were the moderate leaders, extremist leaders, Gandhian leaders, and what all were the contributions or maybe followers. Okay, moderates, extremist, Gandhian phases, their ideologies, their major events, reforms, and major developments, etc. you have to study well. Even the revolutionary phase also you have to study well. Then coming across, yes, Gandhian movements like NCM, CDM, and these Quit India movements, etc. This is again very important. The causes, consequences, and the participation level, that is important. Then it is about achievement of the freedom. Achievement of the freedom, and finally it is partition. Partition, post-independence for mains only, like this new economic policy, Nehruvian era, partition and its aftermath or consequences. Then this 5-year planning and all those things we study in post-independence, okay? So these are things you have to study from modern India. I'm giving you a broader idea that what you have to study in modern India. A detailed analysis we have done, or module-specific sessions we have done, and these are things you have to study from modern India. Now coming across this art and culture. Art and culture, let me tell you, 3 elements are there, which is art forms. Art forms, architecture, and this literature. This you have to study, because why I am saying this, these are the questions UPSC asking from this, asking for the last 30 or 35 years. Or if you take it from 2011 onwards, You can see they asked questions related to art forms, architecture, and to literature from ancient to modern times. Now, world history. When it comes to world history, what do you have to study? You have to start with the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution in this Europe and Asia. You have to study this American Revolution. You have to study this French Revolution. You have to study this nationalism. Nationalism in Europe. You have to study this World War I, World War II, and the causes, consequences. You have to study this League of Nations, or you have to study this United Nations. Yes, the causes for their formation, their functions and their objectives, their achievements, their failure. Again, you have to study, obviously, there is economic depression. Economic depression. You have to study this colonialism and decolonialism. Colonialism, decolonialism, how it affected the third world nations in particular. Africa and obviously Asian nations in particular. So colonialism, decolonialism, and obviously the rise of this unipolar world. Unipolar world and this disintegration of USSR. Disintegration of USSR. All these concepts are important from world history point of view. So in this session, I have given you what you have to study from history for your prelims and mains examination. And again, coming across the NCERT, I would strongly recommend, suggest to each of you aspirants, if you are truly preparing for prelims examination and for mains also, I would recommend to you reading of NCERT. Either you can read old NCERT, which is R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra, Biban Chandra NCERT, or you can read Tamil Nadu NCERT, or you can read these themes in Indian history, the new edition of NCERT. Okay. So these all the things which I would like to share with you. So have a clear-cut strategy. Please practice the previous year's questions, go through the syllabus, and practicing the previous year's questions, that a perfect picture what you have to study in history and what you have, what not to study, what to study. Okay, a clear-cut prioritization, optimization of your time, everything is possible if you are clear with the strategy and the syllabus and the previous year's questions of history. So wishing you all the very best, and please subscribe our channel for more videos and for more preparation and these UPSC standard question discussions, answer discussions, etc. All the very best. Thank you.